Euro-Asian Bob strikes again. When's the last time you saw one of these on the road that's this nice? You probably haven't. Let's get started. This is a 1984 Honda Prelude. No, it's not an Accord or a Civic. It's a Prelude, second generation. When I was a kid, these things were everywhere. Especially the Accords and the Civics, obviously. Millions, all over the place. And now that I think back when Euro-Asian Bob brought this up here, when's the last time I saw a mid-80s Prelude? I can't remember. They're getting that rare. It's so strange to be of the age where I can remember where there was nothing but these cars. Now there are none of these cars on the road hardly anymore. There's some parts we're going to show you today, some things that need to be done to this car that are not available. Maybe you guys can let us know in the comments where you can find the parts, but I did find some parts. This thing is super, super nice. It's all original, all clean, with 130,000 miles. That's it. Let's go ahead and take a look around this thing. Not only is this car cool, but when's the last time you saw this? That is iconic, guys. Totally 80s. I love it. This thing doesn't appear to have been in a wreck. The bumper is all straight and in good shape. It's not cracked or degraded, crumbling. The paint is very shiny and very nice on this car. Those are plastic wheel covers, and you can see the paint is fading around the edges a little bit. But it still looks very presentable and very nice. Even the chrome is spotless on this car. It's very shiny and bright. And look at the lines down the length of the car. It's just so cool. Honda really had it right in the 80s and 90s with these boxy cars that they made. I really love them. We can see it came from Schofield Brothers here in Wichita area in 1984. I love the rear taillights, Mrs. Wizard.
They're awfully square.
That's what I like about them. This thing is shining like a diamond, guys. It is really, really nice. Let's go ahead and jump under the hood. Look, Mrs. Wizard, it's like a Jag.
I like Jags.
Want to get the hood prop for me?
Sure.
And here what we're going to see is an entire flying spaghetti monster of vacuum hoses. This is the years of vacuum lines running vacuum lines and more vacuum lines and more vacuum lines. This is the 1.8 liter 4-cylinder 12-valve. No, it's not a 12-valve Cummins. It's a 12-valve Honda 1.8. You can see we have some of it already apart. And if Mrs. Wizard will scan on the timing belt, you'll see something interesting. It's never been changed since 1984. It has the original Honda timing belt with 130,000 miles, and it's 40 years old, and it still hasn't broken. We are not going to chance it. Euro-Asian Bob isn't going to chance it. We're going to be doing a timing belt service on this car. As you can see, we've already started tearing it down. One thing that's really interesting, Grimes kind of pointed it out on here, is this is a carbureted car, as you can see here. CV dual carb, which are like motorcycle carburetors, constant velocity carburetors. But it has some form of computer control, but it doesn't use wires. Every one of these vacuum lines that are just spread out all over God's green earth on this thing are all controlling emissions equipment, timing, fuel rate, all kinds of things. It has an ECM, but it really doesn't have very many wires. It has like 15 or 20 vacuum lines going to it. It's a vacuum ECM, a vacuum computer. Take a look, guys. Those aren't spark plug wires. Those are all individual vacuum lines controlling different circuits, doing different things on the car. We do have some wiring right here, some very minor wiring. But all of these little diaphragms and things are controlling various different aspects of timing, emissions, fuel rate, all vacuum controlled. So one thing I want to show you on the distributor is that it has a vacuum canister on the side, a diaphragm, but it doesn't have just one vacuum line like on Grandpa's Chevy truck. It has two. The computer can control advance and retard of the timing. It can do both. It's computer controlled, but not with wires. It's with vacuum hoses. It's really weird. It's actually the way they did it back then. It's really cool. A vacuum leak on this would be disastrous to try and track down. Trying to trace all these hoses and lines. Definitely want to do a smoke test on it. But as you can see under the hood, it's very clean, all original. Haven't had Jimbo under the hood cutting vacuum lines and plugging them with golf spike tees, because I've seen that so many times. Everything is intact on this car. What's going to be even more impressive, not only the cleanliness and the good condition, but the styling of the interior. I absolutely love the styling of the 80s Hondas. Take it away, Mrs. Wizard.
So, ladies and gents, welcome back to 1984. Don't you love the orange everywhere? Orange letters and numbers and every gauge, every needle, everything. Orange, orange, orange. But you can do see that it says 130,556 and 7/10 of a mile. Let's go ahead and take our hand off the light so we can see a little bit better. Nice gauge cluster. It is very easy to read because it's in nice day glow orange. Like all the simple lights down there on that below section for our battery, for our oil pressure, you know, seat belts, and I guess a nice gas light. We move up, very, very tiny little dash, but it's in pristine condition. The stitching on this is still intact. Nothing is broken, not even one little thread. It's in amazing condition. So we move down, we have very simple sliders and very simple buttons for our HVAC system, and probably about the only wear we're going to see today is this, where I assume maybe off. That is it. That is where it has rubbed off. That is the only thing. As we move down, we have our very simple, classic Honda cassette player and a nice little hidey hole slot there. Let's go ahead and slide out our ashtray. And again, there we go. Looking good. Gear selector, very simple. Just the push the button, slides back, nothing fancy. It's very straightforward. Got our parking brake, and there's no center console, there's no armrest. That's it. But the seats are in great condition. We can see a little bit of tufting over here on the side, and we see that on the driver's seat as well from getting in and out, you know, 130,000 miles worth. But nothing is, again, no threads broken, nothing. It's got a nice little zigzag design on that center section, and amazingly it has a little bit of bolster on the sides. Our door card is gray and another shade of gray, because everything in here is gray, which I guess is very popular today, at least with our millennial generation. But nothing's broken, no door handles in pristine shape. Do have a lovely little grab handle there to get in and out of the car, and again, it's not broken. Let's check the glove box. This has got to be some of the oldest paper I've seen in a very long time. Here we go. We have the actual owner's manual. When he bought it at Schofield in Wichita, just say Honda. Check this out. Look at those service records. Yeah, they're not all here. He only went to 91, but when oil changes were done, when filters were done, coolant changes, even when he waxed the car one time. Let's go ahead and take a peek inside. Carefully, after all, it is 40 years old. We have directions on our radio. Operating the air conditioning, warranties from 1984, and look, the actual 1984 Prelude owner's manual. Look how thin it is. Obviously, we have a lot more regulations today of what must be put in there, because apparently nobody ever knows how to operate a car today. One thing that is very interesting is this card that reads for tilt steering. I'm not sure if tilt steering wasn't too much of a thing then, but we have to have directions on how to use it. Haven't seen that direction on a separate little card in forever. So here we are at our back seat, and it is very, 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 very small. No leg room whatsoever. But, you know, if you scoot the seats forward up front, you could fit some small people back there. Some children would fit nicely. But some things that are interesting is, notice that there's a pull tab there, but there's a key slot on our back deck. That key slot is where you can actually lock it to where the back seat can't come down. So I don't know, if you kidnap somebody, you put them in the trunk, they can't get out through this way. I don't know. I don't know why that exists, but that's the way it is. One thing I failed to mention a second ago on our doors is notice that there's no controls for the window. It's all manual. But as we move down, you'll see that, again, we have another odd security feature. We have a lock, so we can lock the gas cap and the trunk. Interesting how we are keeping that trunk secure. We're almost done. We're back to the steering wheel. And one thing that's interesting is normally we see our logo for the company in the center of the steering wheel. Yes, we get that. But this one says power steering. power steering existed before then, but it's interesting that they had to make note of that, along with, you know, the tilt steering of the steering wheel. Very interesting. Nonetheless, I'm really curious what this looks like on the underneath. Let's get this in the air.
But one last thing I wanted to add about the engine. It has a full 100 horsepower. That's it. 100 horsepower. This thing is 40 years old with 130,000 miles. I don't know what we're going to find. We're going to look together and see how nice is it on the underneath. So let's get started. Here we see an old technology here. Well, it's not old technology. It's just the way they're mounted. They're actually kind of like strut rods that keep the control arm steady from fore and aft movement. You see we have a metal radiator, not plastic, and it's still good, still happy. You see the transmission here, which on most cars the transmission's on the driver's side, but on a Honda they were backwards for a while. I guess it's not backwards, but passenger side, and the engine is on the driver's side. No leaks going on the transmission. It looks like at some point in the past someone left this just a tiny bit loose or didn't put a new crush washer on the oil plug drain, and it probably sprayed some oil here, but it's not currently leaking. I'll just get that cleaned up and take care of that. Take a look at these brakes. They got quite a lot left, probably 80%. Nothing loose. Brakes look good there. Nothing loose. CV boots are good. Struts are dry. It's got a nice coating on the bottom, which has kept it from rusting, so it's very nice underneath. But we do see new exhaust from here all the way back. So at some point that might have rusted or got bad or whatever, but it's been replaced, and it looked like they did a good job on it. Here's our fuel tank, and then let's go ahead and head back to the rear axle area. Not a whole lot going on. And some rear struts. Our brakes look good. A little tiny sway bar. A little control arm. You can see that this strut is leaking, and that's kind of a problem I want to bring up to you guys. We'll talk about it here in a minute. Disc brakes in the back. They look good as well. Nothing loose. Just a bad strut. So these tires are from 9 of 21, 9th week of 21, which are still good. They look fairly new. But when's the last time you saw our 13 wheels, guys? 13s on it. Those are cool. I actually think they look really good. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't put different wheels on it. I like them just the way they are. Well, let's get this thing on the ground. Wasn't that fun, guys? It was like a trip back in time for those of us who are old enough to remember that this was what was on the road. Sometimes I come across YouTube videos when I'm scanning through YouTube and find people driving through a certain city back in 1982 or 84. It's like you see this everywhere. Everyone at turns, at streets, at exit ramps, gas stations. There's nothing but this. That's the way it used to be, and it's just like, it feels like a few years ago to me, and it's actually 40. I was a little kid then, but I can kind of remember it. This thing, as you saw, is in very, very good shape. The rear struts, I contacted the Honda dealer. They said forget about it. Those are discontinued, and they've been discontinued for a long time. I checked Rock Auto, I checked my WorldPack account, O'Reilly's, AutoZone, CarQuest, Napa. They all said nope, 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 nope. Discontinued, not available, not even an option. Is it really that hard? I mean, I feel like growing up with these cars, they should be a plethora, plentiful parts for these. We're starting to see that the 80s cars are drying up. There's less and less of the cars on the road, which means less and less profits to be had by making parts for these cars, so they just quit. It's supply and demand, and when you take away the demand, there's no reason to supply. Maybe some of you guys in the comments below have a set of new old stock or know where we can get some. Put a link. Now, I don't want a link that's going to take me to a place that says out of stock, not available. I can do that myself. Find me a link that says in stock, ready to buy. And I'd be very grateful if you guys could help out. Unfortunately, struts are not universal. They are manufactured and shaped and made specific to that model of car and only that model of car. I can imagine we would run into that more if we needed other parts on this car. It's kind of hit or miss. Some things are still in stock, some things are unavailable, and they will never be available again. It's kind of sad. I never thought I'd see a day when a Honda has unobtainium parts, but it's starting to get that way. If you're curious about buying this car, the link is in the description below to Eurasian Bob. Again, you're not going to get it for $2,000. Your income tax return, I got $1,500 back, I'll buy that car. No, you're not. This thing's going to be worth a lot more than that. Anyways, contact him if you're interested. Thanks for Eurasian Bob letting us to film this thing. We'll get your timing belt taken care of and get everything up to snuff on the services. If you're curious what kind of tools we use in the shop or that we're going to use on this car, check our Amazon affiliates link in the description below as well. If you purchase anything, we get a small cut. We really appreciate it. Check out Mrs. Wizard's Way. She's got a lot of great content going on there. And make sure to hit the subscribe button here because many more cool videos for you guys. Thanks for watching.